To celebrate the start of the season, we've teamed up with SkyBet. SkyBet understands the emotional roller coaster that's being a football fan. It will lift you up, break you down, and stitch you back together with hope. But we'll do it all again next week, because for all the pain of a looming relegation or missed penalty, there's nothing quite like the absolute scenes of a last-minute winner. Not for everyone, for the fans. SkyBet 18+, gambleaware.org. Right, okay, I should probably confess something. I was boasting about last week how we're top of the league and that's where we were going to stay for another 45 games. Look, we might have been knocked off the top already, 2 games in, but look, the unbeaten season's still on and we're the top goal scorers in the league, so it could be worse. It could be worse, especially you look at some teams. I'm looking at your likes of your Crawleys and your Notts Counties. I know Notts have picked up a point already, or even your Barnet who have made a difficult start to life in League Two by looking at it. But all that and more, and we'll discuss it in a little bit more in detail. Welcome back to 4-Tier Fever, of course. We are back, and this is the review episode. Of course, 12 games gone. Some drama in there, a couple of last-minute winners, a few more goals than was last week, because on the whole, it was a pretty dull affair last week, if I was going to be honest. Probably expected, with it being the start of the season, a few, rusty legs still out there, if that's even a saying. I don't know, I've just probably made that up. And of course, MK Dons were one of the teams that were properly yet to got going last week, but they're up and running in the shape of 3 points this week. And another clean sheet because Luke has gone on about it. Speaking of Luke, we've got him today.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I will be going on about clean sheets constantly because we are still yet to concede a goal under Paul Warne. He's had 6 games in charge. No goals conceded, only 3 shots on target in that time as well. So we're averaging 1 shot on target conceded every 2 games. So that's not too bad. And we've got our first ever win against Barrow, albeit it's only like the 4th time we've played them or something, but all positives so far.
Look, it wouldn't be any good if we just won all 46 games. I mean, where's the fun in that? Last minute equaliser away from home when you were 3-1 down in the 85th minute. I don't mind that too much. It sort of keeps the entertainment value going as we look into our game. But before we do start, of course, a little bit of housekeeping to start with. If you are new around here, make sure you subscribe. It'd be great to have you on. Of course, we thank you for your recent support. Make sure you download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And thank you to SkyBet for sponsoring this podcast. Right, okay, let's get into it. Let's start with the game of the day. And of course, I'm going to start it because I gave it the big I am last week after one game. Rookie mistake, I know. And it sort of hit reality a little bit, sort of a come down to earth. Grimsby Town travelled to Harrogate. And it looked like for a large period, especially near the end, that we're not beating Harrogate again. Look, Harrogate are a side. I've always said, I don't like playing at Harrogate. You know what they're all about. And they've somewhat become a bit of a bogey side for us, especially at their place. Entertaining game in the end. It finished 3-3. 0-0 at half-time. I wasn't at the game. I'm just going off what I've seen and the highlights I have seen. First half, it looked like we were the better team. Probably unlucky not to go in there 1-0 up at the break. Kieran Green at the post, and there was a couple of chances. Nothing massively clear cut. There was a few over the bar, but it looked like we were the ones that were the more threatening. And you know what Harrogate are all about. They're a solid enough team, and they'll look to hurt you at the right moments. And so they did that. They took the lead. It was Reece Cole, is it? I forget. Is it Reece Cole? I've forgotten his name. It might be Reece something. This is horrific. I should have probably got this up. And of course, this is just exposing my ball knowledge. There you go. Reece Smith. Sorry, I don't know where I got Reece Cole from. Yeah, there you go. How embarrassing of me. He scored from a quick free kick. I've got a little bit of gripe on it. I didn't think it was much of a free kick. The free kick was taken in the wrong position and the ball was moving. So that's a little gripe. It was a good finish either way. But in saying that, we was half asleep for that. Charles Vernon with the equaliser. Again, really good move. And great to see Chaz back on the score sheet. Like I said, keep him fit and he'll do bits for us. And I've always said that. I really hope this is the year he stays fit because he's a wonderful player to have. And we're still celebrating until Christy Pym decided to give up with his cup of tea. He got bored of it, got bored of reading the newspaper, and decided to clatter a man 30 seconds right after he equalised and gave away a pretty daft penalty. It was a pen. I've got no complaints. He's absolutely wiped him out. Ellis Taylor scored it, and it went from bad to worse 5 minutes later when Conor McElhenney, new signing, signed on Friday. I think it was 3 minutes into his debut. He got that goal to make it 3-1 to Harrogate. In the 75th minute, it probably looked like game over. We've always had a little bit of a thing where we just don't come. It felt like game over, but this is a different Grimsby team. And look, I think for the two goals, I mean, Harvey Rogers' goal, 84th minute, lovely strike, by the way. It's a proper dart into the corner. And I didn't expect that from him. I didn't think he had that in his locker. But yeah, look, 92nd minute, flick on from Cam Gardner to Jace Cabia. Lovely little finish, proper striker's goal. That I think to have the energy, I think he was a bit quiet all game from the sounds of things. I think that's what Harrogate did really well. You managed to get back on side, have that burst of pace to beat the defender, slot it into the corner, and we took away what feels like a valuable point. Last season we went to Harrogate, it was pretty much similar. We were 2-0 up in the 85th minute. We ended up drawing the game 2-2. That felt like a defeat. This one, we were 2-0, we were 3-1 down in the 84th minute, and it feels like a victory. I mean, it's how the tides can change there. But no, I was delighted with the character we've shown. I think that would have done the lads the world of good. I think 6 goals in the first 2 games is a very encouraging sign. Obviously, the 3 goals conceded there. I think there's elements to all 3 goals that were poor, if I'm going to be honest. But I don't think it was more down to our defensive structure. I think it was more down to individual mistakes there. I think it's too early to tell if we have improved that area or not. So there's clearly stuff to work on there. But I think from that position, you're more than happy with a point, especially against a side in which we don't have much favour against. So, yeah, I'm pretty pleased on the whole that we've managed to salvage something from the game. I won't go on the game too long, so I probably won't mention anything after Luke's had his say on it. But the shouts, we'll mention this in a little bit, but Harrogate are a solid enough side. And I think you could see that yesterday. You could see that from their win at Bristol Rovers last week. They know how to get results, and they've got some good players to do that. Like I mentioned about Conor McElhenney, who signed on Friday. I think that's a very good addition in itself. And they've just made very smart additions, very smart League Two players. They're probably not going to get you promoted or anything like that. But you trust them to do a job. And under a Simon Weaver system, they'll probably go and do that. I think they'll be more than fine come the end of the season. I know that they're always going to be one of the favourites for relegation, and I can understand that with how the size of their club, and maybe they have been a club punching above their weight a little bit. And Simon Weaver's done wonders there, and I think that'll be the same again this year. I've got so much confidence in saying they'll be fine, and they really kept us quiet for a large period of that, but. Yeah, look, I think we'll be happy with the point. I think Simon Weaver will be more disappointed that they're thrown away that late. It roles reversed because that would have been David Artell last season. There's pros and cons to both, but like I said, we don't have much success at Harrogate. To take away a point in those circumstances, yeah, I'm relatively content with that. That'll do.
Well, yeah, as you say, positives and negatives to it, really. No one plays their best football in the opening couple of weeks of the season. So I think you're right on the Harrogate goals. There were some sort of individual defensive errors from Grimsby, but the finishing from Harrogate was still very, very good, in fairness to them. I did enjoy a couple of the Grimsby goals, to be fair. I thought the first one was a good move, and I can appreciate the high tempo of passing for the second one as well. That's the sort of football I like seeing. But as you say, the fight to come back into it is good. It's obviously frustrating to concede that many against a side that typically tend to hover towards the lower end of the table, but at the same time, they got a very good result just a week ago against Bristol Rovers, and to be fair, that's the one thing I'm really happy with for Harrogate, actually. The fact that they've They went and got that win, which I don't think many people were expecting them to. And then they followed it up with a point, albeit they've thrown away another 2 there. But there's no denying that Grimsby are a good side, and they've been building this project. We've been going on about that for so long. So for Harrogate to really sort of show that sort of desire to even go ahead in the first place in that fashion, I think that sets them up quite nicely in the long term. I think that's going to give them a little bit of momentum, or like even though they have lost the 3 points in the end, but I'm still excited with Harrogate at the minute. Actually, you went on about the business there, and I'm sure that's something we'll cover more as the window closes. But I think there are positive signs. I think they will surprise a few this season.
Fair enough, and I think on yesterday's show, and I wouldn't argue too much against that, actually. I know we go on about Harrogate. Like I said, we mentioned about the stature of the club and all that, and the facilities. But they're a very well-run club, and Simon Weaver's no mug. He knows what he's doing. And some of the signings have caught the eye a little bit, certainly with how they want to play. I think one thing, just quickly before we move on, I think it sounded like the substitutes for us made an impact, especially Jamie Walker. Which I was really pleased for that. He had to be fair, he was involved in the first 2 goals quite heavily, if you noticed it, especially the second goal. Then again, just the fact that I think it was him that left it for Charles Vernon. It's just little things like that, and you could really see the impact that he had, and it won't be long before he'll be knocking on the door to start. That's for sure, because he just oozes class from what I've seen from him. We've got a couple of games next week. Of course, we've got the cup game against Shrewsbury. I'm probably expecting a little bit of rotation there for some of the players that haven't featured a great deal. The likes of Jamie Walker, the likes of Justin Amaluza, likes of Rhys Staunton as well. Sam Lavelle hasn't made his debut yet for us because he's been struggling to get in the team, probably just trying to get him up to scratch. And of course, we've got Newport next week. I don't want us to lose in front of Kieran because I know he's coming to the game from what it sounds like, but I'll let you know how that goes next week. But yeah, there's pros and cons to both, but I'm content with it. Let's go to Swindon. They picked up a very good result, their first win of the season, 3-2 win against Cambridge. I know Cambridge won their opening day game against Cheltenham. They took the lead as well, did Cambridge, through James Brophy, but 2 goals in quick succession through Andrinen. And you always expected Harry Smith to score, especially with the reports of this summer that Cambridge have tried bidding for him when Ian Holloway's clearly stated on numerous occasions that he wouldn't even sell him if Man City come knocking. He just knew he was going to score. It felt inevitable, and it was a proper Harry Smith goal in the end. And of course, they extended that lead just after half-time through Darren Oldacre. It was a bit of a mess from Cambridge perspective, if I'm going to be honest, defensively, and the goalkeeper, Jake Eastwood, from what I remember of that. And of course, I mean, they did pull one back, Sully Kaikai. It was a good finish. But yeah, look, Ian Holloway, Swindon, up and running, especially after losing last week. I think in the manner that they conceded that goal to Walsall last week. They're up and running on home soil. Cambridge is their first defeat of the season. Certainly some food for thought for Neil Harris there. Some positive signs, I think, throughout for both. I mean, look, Cambridge is another 2-goal score for them. I mean, Swindon, they're up to 4 goals scored now already. You know, they've scored 3 at home. You expect Swindon to be high scoring again as they were under Ian Holloway last season, especially second half. Certainly looks like there's an exciting team building there. But it was important to get that win quickly, I think, for Swindon. Like I said last week, the manner they conceded that goal to Walsall was horrific. I think Ian Holloway was the first one to say it. And it would be insulting to schoolboys if I said anything different. But, you know, they're up and running at home. I mean, they sort of made a little bit hard work with it. I think, you know, when they pulled the goal back for 3-2, it could have easily been, might have been more goals in it, because we've seen Swindon and some of the goals in their games that they had last season, they could have been potential, but they're up and running either way.
Yeah, I mean, they're up and running. You mentioned that it's for Swindon, that's 4 goals scored. It's also 4 goals conceded, 2 in both games.
It's never going to be
that's where I'm concerned. That's where I'm concerned. It's the fact it's 2 in both games. And, I mean, to be fair, I think this game was pretty much just all-out attack from both teams, really. I don't think there was much actual defending going on, if I'm being honest. I didn't like the defending I saw from either team. And I did kind of make a point in the notes I made preparing for this episode. I really don't like Cambridge's defending for those goals. They're just very, very static. They don't track back very often, or if they do, it's only a couple of them at a time. There's just things that really, really need to be ironed out there. There are positive signs going forward, and these guys can clearly get a few goals, but it can't come at the expense of being solid at the back, because you're not going to be free scoring every single game. There are going to be times where you miss the chances that you shouldn't, as some other teams in the league this week have. They've missed some really easy chances, and you're going to have those days sometimes. On those days, you have to at least be able to defend it at least a little bit, so these games don't get away from you. But there are positive signs, just a lot to work on for both sides at this stage.
You reckon Ian Holloway's just like a bit of a robot in the changing room? It's just like, right, okay, just attack. That's it. That's the sort of... that's just his vibe anyway, and it's worked for Swindon in the past. It might have... And when they ask to defend, maybe at times, it can go wrong, as we saw last week, as maybe times that we have seen already, and including last season as well. But look, who says it's going to be boring? It won't be boring at Swindon. It never really is. I sort of take it similar to us. 6 goals scored. We conceded 3 yesterday. It won't always be dull. This is League Two at the end of the day. But that's what you sort of want, isn't it? You want your team to play exciting, attacking football. And you get the impressions that Swindon don't look far off from where they left off last season, do they?
I'm
just going off 3 goals, and I think if there was better finishing last week, because they did dominate the shooting stats against Walsall. Maybe a couple of rusty legs out there, but I don't know. But it seems like it won't be long before I don't think they'll batter a team again. I just get that feeling with them. What I feel and what they might do are 2 different things, however.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky one for me. They obviously did have a lot of goals in them last season, so in that regard, yes, absolutely. They have kind of carried on from where they've left off, but if goals aren't the problem, then that's not what you need to be working on anymore. It's stopping them at the other end. What was it a couple of seasons ago where Notts were scoring for fun, but it didn't matter because they were also conceding for fun as well. And
that Notts side was just vibes, wasn't it? They'd go and score 6 in one game, and then they'd probably concede 5 to go along with it. They had some right results that season. I include the 5-5 in that we had against them. That was fun. Well, not fun watching it, but as a neutral, you're looking at that. And you see the howlers that Notts had as well. And we'll talk about Notts and howlers in a minute, because they had another one, of course. But yeah, I'm all for it. Just go full gung-ho. It's great.
Yes, obviously we all want to see attacking football and all the rest of it, but as a fan, you just want to see your team win more than anything. I don't care if it's the most boring game in the world. If we win 1-0, I'm happy. That's the most important thing for me. It's the results. It's a results-based industry, and that's how you get success. It's just by winning games. It's not necessarily by one style of play. It's just whatever works to get you the result.
It's certainly not in Ian Holloway's book. I remember when he first came to us, I think he might have said it a few times, to be fair. Probably not just us, but he'd rather win 5-4 than see his team win 1-0, because at least then fans are entertained. But yeah, you're probably right, to be fair. It's a results business, isn't it? And you'd rather your team pick up results, but I still stand by that Notts team. They were fun for periods, because you just knew there was going to be so many goals in their games. I do think that'll happen in Swindon, but yeah, look, I think there's a little bit of food for thought for Cambridge. Yeah, I think there's stuff to work on, but at least I think probably, defensively it was a bit poor, but they've got that win under their belt, so I think there's a little bit of pressure off them, if that makes sense a little bit. It's about how they respond, but again, it's early days, isn't it? So I don't think there's panic stations just yet. We did mention about Notts and howlers. We're going to touch on them now. They lost 2-1 to Salford. I think I saw yesterday that that Salford have a very good record against Notts. I think before the game, I think there was a stat that I saw that Salford had beaten Notts in their last 3 games. I mean, make that 4 if that's the case. I could be completely wrong there, and I apologise if I am. But yeah, look, this is a good win for Salford. I watched the game. You know what Salford are going to do. You know what a Carl Robinson team are going to do away from home at a big ground like Meadow Lane. And they set it up. They set it up really well, and they were the much better side. Scored 2 goals, maybe a little bit of Notts' undoing. I mean, the corner, the header from Aloru, I believe it was, great header. I do question the marking; it was quite poor. And Kelly Amai got his first goal of the season through, let's just say, less than convincing playing out from the back, especially from Cal Roos in goal. He won't want to watch that one, but it was really poor. I can't believe he'd probably look at a man in that position and think, yeah, okay, he's completely free. I'm going to play that pass. And I'm not surprised he was dispossessed there. It sort of just compounded what was a really poor afternoon for Notts at that point. Because on the ball, they were slow with it. It looked like they just looked so disjointed. I think it's probably what I saw Notts in that game. Look, I mean, they pulled a goal back. Good finish from Jaden Luca. Great to see him score. There's clearly a player in Luca. I think there was a couple of circumstances last season as it didn't really work out as much as maybe we wanted to. I think the fact we signed him injured was a big part of that. But it's clearly a talented player there, and good to see him score. I think it was a bright spark and a poor performance when he came off the bench, and you didn't feel like Notts were really going to equalise. To be honest, Salford were quite comfortable in what they were doing. They were running the clock down as you'd expect them to do, and they played some decent stuff along the way and might have scored a couple more. Yeah, look, 2 points picked up from, 1 point, picked up in their first 2 games for Notts. Salford have got that win after that defeat to Crewe last week. Of course, they'll be the better side, and they were the better side in the game. For Notts, a couple of question marks, I think, especially with Martin Patterson already, and especially with the goalkeeper. I'm not sold on Cal Roos, so I'll be completely honest. I think he's a downgrade on Bass, truth be told, and especially with how they want to play. I just don't think he fits that system. He's not a goalkeeper he just doesn't look like he's comfortable at playing out. And there was an instance in the first half where, they nearly scored. It was just before half time. It looked like he just looks like he's scared to come off his goal line. That's the concern I've got with him. And I think Notts County do need to look at another goalkeeper. I think there's been interest in Archie Mayer going back there, but we'll have to see where that comes through that. It's not just on Kel Roos. There was a lot of players out there that were very below par yesterday. And then, there's certainly some work to do for Martin Patterson, who certainly didn't come with glowing reviews anyway. And I'm just worried about that, if they have more performances like that, it'll only start to heat up a little bit. But it was poor from Notts yesterday. There's no shadow. There's no coat in it. Salford were the better side and deserved all 3 points. That's just what I saw from the game.
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue with that, to be fair. And I think with your point on Luca, I think you touched on a bigger talking point there, actually. I don't want to call Notts themselves inconsistent at this stage. We're 2 games in. That would be, absurd. But the squad that they built is a group of players that historically have been quite inconsistent through their careers. Obviously at Dons we've had Connor Grant, we've had Matt Dennis. These are players that on their day can be absolutely fantastic, but that day comes one in however many games, and it feels like they've got too many of those sorts of too many of those sorts of players in that squad currently, and they've used that to replace the star quality that they had last season, like a Bass, like a McGoldrick, and so on. And obviously they're not playing with Jatta at the moment either, and that's hindering them. I think going forwards they just didn't look well. Again, consistent's probably not the right word because, like I said, too early in the season, they just looked a little bit streaky to me. Didn't necessarily have the moments of quality where you'd want them to have those moments. And then defensively, they were just way too easy to open up. As you said, the marking for the corner was atrocious. And I just think there's a lot of work to be done with Notts. However, I don't want to take anything away from Salford. I think that's a strong performance from them, and especially on the road as well. They can take a lot of credit for that, and it sets them up quite nicely. Gives them a bit of momentum coming into the next few games.
Yeah, absolutely, and they deserve all the praise they get for that. Salford. I think just going back to Notts, they've obviously lost Bastard Peterborough. They've got some decent money from that, from the sounds of things. Obviously, losing someone like David McGoldrick is always going to be big. It was evident he's just too good for League Two, and you saw it yesterday, him bagging the winner for Barnsley in the last minute in League One. I just think with the goalkeeper, I think they've certainly got some money behind him. I think that's a position that you can't go cheap. I feel like Kel Roos is the cheap option. I just get that feeling with them. I know he's got experience at a higher level. I've never really been convinced with him. And I just think that's a position you can't get wrong. You've mentioned about Jatta being out. Obviously, with that suspension, Matt Dennis was the only recognised striker yesterday. He took him off after an hour, so there was no striker on the pitch that finished the game. Maybe in that instance, unless there was something else up, I'd rather you just keep him on, to be honest, unless he was blowing or he had an injury or anything like that. They need additions, they really do, and they need good additions, because I have been underwhelmed with their business so far. I don't really, and even with the players to come back, the likes of Jatta, would it get much better at the minute with the players they've got? I don't really know, and I think I'm just seeing a lot of problems that they had, at times that they had last season. They need to pick up. They need to improve. And like I said, you've always got that question mark on Patterson. It's probably a little bit too early to tell, but it's certainly right to raise that question, especially with how long that recruitment process was and the fact that they ended up with him. I know that he's obviously been away with Huddersfield, had a less than convincing time at Burton Albion, which has already put him on the back foot a little bit. So clearly has something to prove. He can clearly talk a good game, but I think we need to see actions. From what the sounds of it, even at Newport, that didn't sound particularly impressive. It's still early days, of course, but there's a lot to work on, certainly from that. And I was I felt upset watching Notts yesterday. I don't support them at all, but they were just so below par. It was untrue. But of course, like I said, we take nothing away from Salford. Good victory for them. But that was just my concern. I just wanted to raise that concerns I had with Notts, because they weren't pretty yesterday. Let's call a spade a spade. MK Dons, they picked up their first victory of the season. They went to Barrow. They don't normally do well against Barrow, but they ended up beating them 2-0. Luke, 3 points away at Barrow. I mean, it's another clean sheet. I know. I think you put it in the chat yesterday. Guess how many clean sheets we've had under Paul Warne or something? They want to reply for about half an hour. I'll tell you, it's like, because no one's bothered, mate. But look, gone away to Barrow and you picked up a win.
Well, it's just crucial to get that first one on the board, and the fact that we've done it somewhere where Barrow's one of those sorts of grounds where we tend to struggle. We go to those sort of grounds and we immediately, we huff and we puff, and eventually we lose 1-0 to some weird sort of counter-attack thing that will happen, because that's just us in a nutshell normally. But actually, we were relatively dominant, and it took us a while to get the first goal. We probably, we had another sort of controversial decision that, with that whole Hepburn Murphy, whether the ball crossed the line before he eventually brought it back round to score. And I think, just judging by the fact that the entirety of Barrow's defence carried on, including the goalkeeper who was right in front of it, would maybe suggest that ball probably wasn't out of play, because they would have been screaming for it if it was. The only guy that was appealing for it was the guy that made the mistake with the pass back and was practically stood on the halfway line, so didn't exactly have the best view. But fortunately for us, not a problem, because we went and scored a couple more. And Callum Batson is he looks like a natural fit for this league. I know in his post match he was.
I think he would be with the experience he's got.
Well, yeah. Well, this is the thing. He was talking about how he's still adjusting to this league and still learning how it works and all the rest of it. He just feels like a natural fit. You know, he's so good in the air. He's hardworking, and he's got that sort of finishing touch on him as well. And you know, both goals have come through him at some point. You know, there's a lot of other sort of individuals I could point out for playing well, but so much of it went through him. And I think he's maybe a bigger signing than we perhaps realised. You know, perhaps he could actually be the player we needed even more than we needed an Aaron Collins, you know, even though he does score hat tricks in 5 minutes. But although he did miss this one through injury that he picked up against Oldham, thanks for that, lads. Um, but yeah, the fact that we look that good with what I think we've got 6 first team players missing already, and you wouldn't tell. you wouldn't have been able to tell. And then we've obviously got our lovely new signing coming off the bench as well. I'm probably going to butcher his name because I've not looked up how to say it yet. Marvin Ekpiteta or however.
Yeah, him.
Yeah,
of course.
that's another ridiculous signing. Yeah, it's all just very positive. Sets us up nicely to go and to go and face Bristol City in the cup and then Cheltenham in the next league game. I will say for Barrow though, because I saw their fans were heavily concerned after that game, and yes, I get that they weren't great by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, we're 2 games in, they faced us and they faced Chesterfield.
Yeah, I was just thinking that they've played the 2 favourites already. I mean, come on. I think there was always going to have a little bit of a tough time, especially when they're really second best in both those games. Certainly, what they fancied.
Yeah, I wouldn't be judging their team too soon. I'm looking at the next few games. I think the fact that they kept Chesterfield to 1 could actually potentially look like a very good scoreline in a few months' time. Obviously, we don't know until the table starts to take shape, but it's certainly too early to be judging them that harshly. Yes, it was a bad performance, but without trying to sound too arrogant, it's against us. Like.
Nah, that just sounds like the big I am.
It sounds bad. I recognise that, but there's a lot of individual quality in that side, and and luckily for us, that individual quality showed up on the day, and unfortunately, that just wasn't the case for Barrow. I think there's more to come from them, though.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to tell where you stand with Barrow after the 2 games that they've had against, like I said, the 2 promotion favourites in MK and Chesterfield. You look at their next few games. They've also got Preston in the Cup in midweek. They've got Notts County, Harrogate, Colchester, Fleetwood and Swindon their next 5. It'll be a little bit more of an indication as to where they are after those games. I'm intrigued how they'll get on against Notts next week. That's at Barrow, of course, after just grilling Notts for the best part of 5 minutes. So, Notts certainly need a performance, and I think this is the real start that I think Barrow probably needed. There's no denying there's a half-decent squad there. I probably won't go as far to say it's groundbreaking at times. We have mentioned the amount of players that they've lost over the summer, but you just look at MK's squad. I mean, you're adding Marvin Ekpiteta to that. I know you signed in the week. I mean, it's just a very good squad. There's not really much more you can say on that. And of course, Callum Patterson on the score sheet yesterday, scoring his first goal. I mean, Alex Gill will be on the score sheet again. It probably won't be the last time we'll be saying that this season. No, he liked to bag a few. So, in terms of a win, MK are up and running. And I mean, Chesterfield, they went and won a game again. I say that like they didn't beat Barrow on the opening day, but they went to Cheltenham and they won 2-0. Both goals come in the second half. In that one, Lewis Gordon, I think, with his first goal for the club, and then Dylan Duffy, I believe from a free kick. I believe it was a pretty smart free kick. But 2 from 2 for the Spyrites.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, I mean they looked pretty good in the first game. I think they've kind of stepped it up a notch again. They looked pretty dominant away from home as well. I mean, it was a beautiful opening goal. I can't get over that one. I loved watching that opening goal. Watching through the highlights earlier, and they had plenty more chances as well. Could have easily been more. And like I said, this is second game of the season. They're still going to get better than that, which is scary. if you support anyone that isn't Chesterfield, to be fair. It looked like there was a clear difference in quality between the two sides. I do want to give at least a little bit of credit to Cheltenham. They did generate a couple of decent chances. They just obviously didn't take those chances on the day, and they just couldn't stop the bombardment of attacks coming down at the other end. And I don't want to be too quick to judge, because I do think Cheltenham were poor on the opening day. I can understand them maybe struggling in this particular fixture. They've now got to face us in their next league game as well, so it'll be a few more games. But they are a side I am a bit more concerned about Cheltenham, but I don't want to judge them too harshly too soon.
To celebrate the start of the new season, the Fourth Tier Fever podcast has teamed up with SkyBet to celebrate the world's wildest emotional rollercoaster, being a football fan. SkyBet understands the beautiful chaos of being a football fan. It'll lift you up, it'll break you down, and it'll stitch you back together again with those little bits of hope. Because for all the pain of a looming relegation or missed penalty, there's nothing quite like the absolute scenes after a last-minute winner that leaves you hugging people you've never met in your life. For me, we've had relegations out of the Football League and we've had demotions in our time, but I'd happily go through that again just to relive those unbelievable high memories of back-to-back promotions at the home of English football. Although I hope we don't get relegated anytime soon. Being a fan isn't for everyone. Some people say it's just a game and question why we shout at the TV or standing in the pouring rain just to see our team lose 1-0. But to those who get it, there's nothing quite like it. The highs, the lows, the heartache and the glory, it's all part of the ride. And is it worth it? You bet it is. Not for everyone. For the fans. SkyBet. 18+. BeGambleAware.org.
I think the main thing I took away from, I think what Mike Flynn said was the fact that they knew that they were going to have a difficult start, but it almost sounded like he was expecting more. And I'm struggling to see the quality in the squad. I know we've mentioned a few times the futures of Jordan Thomas and Ethan Archer are up in the air, and that still appears to be the case. There was reports that they were doubts for the game, which of course that sparks the rumour mill, doesn't it? When you hear that, I think Jordan Thomas was on the bench, and I think Archer played in the end. Yeah, he did. So I'm just wondering, once those two go, I'm wondering where is the quality. I know I know that, like I said, they're playing one of the best sides in the league well, certainly what you expect him to be. But I mean, I just look at that squad. I mean, I don't really know where. Say you take Archer and Thomas out of it completely. I don't really know where the excitement is in it. I don't really know where the I don't really know where the threats are. That's what I'm struggling. I mean, you've got Lee Angle and George Miller up front. I mean, they can get a few goals in League Two, but are they spectacular? Probably not. And you just look at it all around. Liam Kinsella. I mean, you got Young in midfield. He's a decent player, to be fair. They just look solid, but without being inspiring. That's what I'm currently getting from them. And obviously, 2 defeats from 2 is certainly not a good look. And of course, it's not going to get any easier. As like I said, they've got MK Dons to play next, who are arguably they are the favourites. And I've got plenty of question marks over them. Of course, that takeover is still going through. I think they just need it done, don't they? They just need it. Maybe they just need it done. So hopefully they've got time to implement some fresh ideas in there in terms of maybe some new signings. I think the squad certainly needs it. Yeah, I'm really not sure on Cheltenham at the minute, but too early to tell. Maybe it's a decent win for Chesterfield. And again, going to Cheltenham, who were half decent home last season as well. So, look, I mean, it's scary the potential they've got, isn't it? I think, yeah, look, 2 wins from 2. They'll be pleased. It's the perfect start. What to say, and there's not really much more to say other than the fact that they've got up to the best start possible. Paul Cook's an excellent manager, and they'll probably look to continue it on. And they're not done yet transfer wise. I saw they'd assigned some bloke from Canada in a week as well, who's not joining them until January, which sounds like that's pretty cool. I mean, that's certainly an out there transfer. I'm all for that. As we've seen as well with Grimsby at times. But yeah, good for them. We'll get into one more game before we just stop briefly for a moment. Fleetwood, 2 wins from 2 to start the season. They picked up a very good win against Bristol Rovers, who are yet to pick up a point this season. And I'll tell you what, Dave it's Davis, isn't it? The Will Davis. I forgot his first name. Again, the lack of preparation is staggering from myself. 2 very nice finishes from him. 3 goals in 2 games. He could be a very smart pickup from the looks of things. Of course, had that nous last week to caught Owen Evans off guard for Barnet, but no, 2 goals in the first half for him. A penalty from a Promise on a Chair. I think that's how you pronounce his name, isn't it? Used to play at Fleetwood, of course. So, of course, it almost felt inevitable that a former Fleetwood player will go back to score against his old club. But no, it's a very good start for Fleetwood against a side fancied to do all right this year. But you'd probably say the same about Fleetwood. There's certainly some good players in that squad. And under Pete Wild, I mean, they currently sit second after 2 games. Of course, we haven't mentioned Crewe yet. So that's how we are with there. But yeah, look, I like the look of this Fleetwood squad at present. They've got some characters in there. They've got a bit of quality, and they've got some decent goal scorers in there as well. It looks like a very good breed, and you've got Pete Wild as a gaffer. I don't think they could have really asked for a better start. Whereas, as you look at it for Bristol Rovers, 2 defeats from 2, just the 1 goal scored in there. I mean, they've got Chesterfield next, actually. That'll be some win if they can get that. But yeah, I mean, they've just not got going yet at all, and that's what I've noticed. And Darryl Clark didn't seem particularly pleased listening to his interview, if I'm going to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I mean, Bristol Rovers are they're a tricky one for me. I'm glad you've brought up the interview because that's the bit I find concerning. It's this whole fragile mentality comment thing that's come along, and it's like, well, you haven't really reset from that relegation yet, have you? And and I mean, to be fair, that is reflected in that performance because to me it looked like they were totally outclassed. I mean, the penalty made it look a little bit more respectable towards the end, but they weren't getting back into that game, really, were they? I do think there's more to come from them. It's just they need to find a way to get that first win. The longer they go without it, obviously it's only 2 games, so no panic stations yet, of course not. But the longer they go without that first win, that could start to become more of a concern because, like I said, it's momentum's such a huge thing in football. You have to stop the downward spiral as quick as you can. And if these players can find their feet, I do think there is a very, very good squad there. But it's just that first step, and the first step is the hardest. However, don't want to take anything away from Fleetwood. Will Davies is, he's stepping up to the EFL with ease, isn't he? He's, it was a beautiful move for the first goal, just as a team. Lovely team goal. But it's the turn of pace that he has. He seems to catch defences by surprise. I don't know if teams are eventually going to get used to that, but that's sort of both games he's played where he sort of just appeared. Oh, he's through on goal. How'd that happen then?
Just proper intelligent. That's what I get from
it. Yeah, exactly that. And it could well be another few weeks before League Two defenders figure out how you actually stop him. Whether that's sitting deeper, trying to catch him offside by going higher, or whatever. I'm sure I'll leave the professionals to figure that one out. But no, it's a really good start. What intrigues me is how long they can keep it up, because what happens when they're faced with adversity? Because I think we're not plain sailing because they've faced decent opposition, but eventually there will be some sort of bump in the road, and I want to see how they react to that. But early signs are they're a very strong side.
Yeah, absolutely. You're never going to be perfect all season, are you? And I think you're going back to Bristol Rovers. You always want to get that win as quick as you can, that first one. And 2 games in, probably not Of course, not the start that they wanted. Probably still a little bit of a hangover from relegation. But yeah, I'd certainly keep an eye out for Will Davis. I'd probably say him. And they're a little bit short. So I'm just going to share my love for Jace Cabby. I think those two strikers in particular, I think have really caught the eye in League Two early on with how they approach. And again, they just seem very intelligent. We saw it with Davis at Sutton last season, the goals he scored, and Cabby is already having a very good impact with us. Like I said, I was very complimentary of the goal that he scored yesterday for him. It was a proper striker's goal. Look, I'm not taking away from anything that Will Davis has done. Very good player and two lovely finishes for the goals. But yeah, I'm really curious to see how they get on in terms of adversity when they're faced with it, because it'll come. But there's no denying that they are playing some decent stuff at them. Or they've started to play some decent stuff. It's got a couple of decent goals. And yeah, they're two good wins to start the season. It must be said. Right, okay, we're gonna have a break. From talking about the League Two games for a moment. We'll rattle through the other 6 games very quickly in a short moment time. But this is a new feature for 4-Tier Fever that we're bringing into the season. This will mainly be on the preview episodes in midweek, but we thought we'd do it for today. This is basically our fan feature. Basically, this is sponsored by SkyBet, of course, our sponsors. And today we probably should have done this a little bit earlier, but we are just going to have a look at the bookies odds for this. Of course, we are sticking with SkyBet for this. I've got them up here with me, and we're just going to have a little bit of a 5-minute chat about if we probably agree with them or not. It's pretty much like our predictions, basically. Although it's what we go for that. Let's just go for the winner first to win the league. Of course, MK Dons. MK Dons favourite at 9-4. Chesterfield second favourites at 7-2. And then you sort of look down the list a little bit. Gillingham a third favourite at 10-1, and there's an interesting one. Swindon and Salford both at 12-1. Grimsby, Notts County, Walsall 16-1. Bristol Rovers at 18-1. And then you got like Crewe at 20-1, Colchester 22-1, all the way down. I won't mention any more, but if you fancy Newport to win the league, it's currently at 250-1 on SkyBet. I mean, that'll certainly raise Kieran tackles, that's for sure. But yeah, look, I think we look at it. I think we all expected MK Dons and Chesterfield to be strong. I don't think there's real many complaints about the top 2 favourites there. Gillingham at 10-1. I mean, I'm really interested to see the thoughts of I mean, going at the past few years, yes, Gillingham are strong. Oh, that's what we claim to be anyway. They're strong. They've got we think they have some good foundations there. And they've got a decent manager now in Gareth Ainsworth. Maybe this year might be different. Of course, I picked up that good win against Walsall yesterday, which we'll touch on in a moment. But I'm surprised they've been up there, to be honest. It's not just on SkyBet, with other bookies as well. Especially the last few years, I think they've just more for the fact that maybe the quality of the squad on paper than more than actually how it's performed, because they have stanked the place out at times. If I'm going to be nice to them, Swindon is an interesting one, but sort of see why, especially with the second half of last season, because it was very much promotion form. And of course, if Holloway was out at the end of the season, it might have been different. It might have snuck into the top 7. Salford was strong again. Salford were pretty strong last year. Grimsby around there. Notts, I just feel like Notts have fallen off a little bit. Yeah, and then you've got Walsall in there. Bristol Rovers at 18-1, maybe a little bit low. I mean, this is currently. I think if we did this at the start of the season, right bang on, they'd have probably been like third favourite. But obviously, with the start that they've made, with the 2 defeats, they've been down there. Even Crewe top of the table at 20-1. After 2 wins for them. So yeah, a couple of it. It's Gillingham that sticks out like a sore thumb to me. I'm not sure about you.
Yeah, that Gillingham one is rogue. I mean, I can understand it to a degree why they've done it, because they've got all the resources and all the rest of it. They've got Ainsworth there, that's typically a manager from a higher division, but they haven't really fixed the problems they had last season. I feel like if you take a deeper look at that squad, I know that Sepam Holden and Sam Vokes are yet to play, but I don't know. It just feels like they've got the same problem they had last season and the season before. So for me, I think there are other teams that I'd be putting money on, not Gillingham for me. If I've got to be honest. Yeah, I'd say it's a similar story with Notts. I appreciate that they're a big club, and they do have a couple of fantastic players in Jatta and Jones and Badeau and whoever else. But I think there's a lot more problems there. I mean, how I favour project sides that are quite far along in their project. I'm looking at your Grimsby's, your Colchesters, your Salfords. I know Colchester haven't started great, to be honest. They seem to have picked up a few problems, but with Grimsby and Salford, I'm looking at those sides and thinking, you know what, if you're going to have like an outsider there, that's the sort of one I'd look for, and I think they've maybe been underrated a little bit.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
No, I mean we still exist, so
unfortunately. Right. Let's have a look at the. I know we've just touched on the league. We'll probably just touch on top three in a minute. Let's have a quick look at the relegation sides. Of course, this is currently at present. Newport are still the favourites at 2-1. Of course, they've started the season pretty strong, and Kieran will not be best pleased with that. I'd imagine with that. Cheltenham at 3-1. Accrington at 10-3. Harrogate a price at 7-2. 4 favourites to go down. Like I said, I really don't think Harrogate will drop. But you can understand it. I think from obviously as the points mentioned earlier, Crawley are all the way down at 5-1 as well after their very poor start to the season. I think it's got to be said. I mean, you go further down, Barrow are 6-1, Bromley are 13-2. I don't think they'll go. I mean, Shrewsbury are priced at 13-2, and I'd be worried for them after yesterday's result. If that's anything to go by. Yeah, look, you can maybe understand it with Newport. I had my doubts over them. I had my doubts over Cheltenham. I had my doubts over Accrington. Harrogate less so, but you can understand it, I think. Crawley, I think I need to see a little bit more of, but the early signs don't look great, I'll be honest. Barrow, again, I think it's just too early to tell at the minute with them because I have played on paper what's probably going to be the two strongest sides in the division. Bromley, I don't think they'll be down there. And Shrewsbury, I sort of see, I think they will be, to be honest. Nothing has convinced me on Shrewsbury at all. Yesterday's result wouldn't have done anything for that. But it's probably what you'd expect, to be honest. I think, no disrespect to the clubs or the sides or anything like that. Of course, two teams do have to go down. But you can also understand it from that point of view, especially with the likes with Newport, as I've said. Cheltenham and Accrington. I think there's valid points to them.
Yeah, I'd agree with most of that. I can certainly see why Newport, Cheltenham, Accrington are there with their sort of various issues / the way they operate. Get nice odds on Shrewsbury, in my opinion, especially given the way they've started. The only one that I question is that Bromley one. I'm like, really? Like I get it to an extent, size of the club. But for me, I really rate what they're doing and I know we've not discussed them yet, but I just like the way they set up. But I won't say too much because, like I said, we'll cover it in a little bit. But I don't see them being down there personally, like even remotely close to it. But other than that, there are some decent odds there personally.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I'm just having a look at the others. Top 7 finish. If you fancy Grimsby for it, they're 6-4. If you fancy an MK Dons top 7 finish, they're priced at 1-5. I mean, come on. Is there any others that really catch my eye? Not particularly. I mean, Bromley at 7-2 is a half decent price, but probably asking a little bit much. Fleetwood at 9-4, I don't think is terrible either. Especially with how they started the season. To be promoted, of course, that's for a top 7 finish. To be promoted, I mean, MK Dons at 8-15. And Chesterfield at 10-11. Where Grimsby in that? 3-1. That's a good price. To be promoted, top 3 finish. Come on.
I'm liking some of these. Might have to get to work after the pod. There we go.
Yeah. See, I mean, look, come on. I won £300 yesterday. I've got Doncaster Rovers to thank for that. Mainly. And Owen Bailey, I think, for them, their last-minute goal at Mansfield in League One. But yeah, I mean, look, I even put money on a MK Dons win, and you were going on to me at the time saying you're brave against Barrow. I know you say you don't have the greatest record against. So
Well, yeah.
It'll do me. It wins. It won. So it helped me to.
Well, hey, if you're a lucky charm, keep betting on us. Please do.
Right, I'll come back to you in 2 years when I get another winner. So yeah, that was pretty much our fixture for this week. Of course, like I said, we'll probably do more on the preview shows going forward. Just because obviously there's a lot to discuss in the review show, but we thought we'd bring that to you. Of course, that is in partnership with SkyBet. So let's get back to the review, and there's a preview. We've got 6 games to get through. I'm conscious we've already had 54 minutes, so we'll probably rattle through these very quickly. Let's start with Crewe. 2-0 victory for them against Harrogate at home. A really good strike in there from Reece Hutchinson. It's got to be said. And to be fair, their second goal was quite decent as well. Look, two wins for them from 2, and 2 good wins as well, especially that win at Salford last week. I mean, a couple of bizarre circumstances, especially with the own goal that Kadeem Harris scored, but not really his fault. It was more they just couldn't clear their lines. It was just an unfortunate turn of events, but they've still managed to do their job, and it looked like they were the better side throughout the game as well. Just encouraging stuff. I always said that Crewe needed to start relatively strong. I think they have that over 2 games. Is it really enough to really judge after 2 games? Probably not. The big question marks will they be able to carry that on? They've got Crewe, Fleetwood and Gillingham to come in their next few games. It's a defeat for Accrington, of course, 1 point in their first 2 games. They drew with Gillingham on the opening day. They go to Salford next. They've got Peterborough in the cup after winning that game in the preliminary round against Oldham last week, in which, to be fair, looked like they did bits, as much as Oldham were pretty poor throughout that game. They were very clinical, especially first half. They got some half-decent goals, to be fair. There were some good finishes. I'm looking at the next few games for Accrington. They've got Salford, Tranmere, Grimsby coming up, Shrewsbury as well. There's probably opportunities for points there as well. I won't worry too much just yet, but you probably are going to, because Accrington are probably the favourites for a lot of people to get relegated at the start of the season. So I think there's always that little bit of doubt in their minds. But yeah, look, it's a win for Crewe. It's a good win as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean that they've started so well. I mean, it's too early to be apologising for my predictions or anything like that, but absolutely credit where it's due for the start. And I actually want to point out their keeper, Tom Booth, who's stepped up into the first team this year. We should have given him a bit more credit when he went and saved a penalty after stepping up like last week. But clean sheet in the second game as well. So really, really good start from him. And as you say, both goals were just fantastic. Great strikes, absolutely outrageous, that first one.
Yeah.
I think certain sides will sort of assert their dominance over a side like Accrington, and Crewe have proven themselves so far to be one of those teams. They easily could have scored a couple more. And this was just a very, very solid win, and it just keeps things flowing along nicely, gives them that nice bit of momentum coming into the next few weeks. Obviously, there is that little bit of concern that Accrington haven't started well. Not necessarily surprised, but at the same time, they have just faced a side that, we're just saying started really, really well. So, again, too early to be calling anything. I do have my concerns over the lack of quality in the side, but again, I don't want to call anything too early, because Crewe could potentially be one of the better sides for all we know.
Yeah, I think. I've been quite critical of Notts County and Chesterfield. Not Chesterfield. I've been far from critical of Chesterfield, of Cheltenham, in this podcast. But in terms of where you're properly judging, you can't really judge anyone really after 2 games, can you? I think you've got to give them probably at least 10 before you start to make a formal judgment. I'm reserving judgment on them at the minute, because it just does feel like too early to tell. But like I said, they did pick up that good win against Oldham, who thought they played quite well throughout, to be fair. And like I said, as for Crewe, I'm not quite writing the apology letters to Lee Bell just yet, but it's no doubt it's been a positive start for them. And he'll be really pleased with that. It's just if they can keep that going, that's the main thing for them at the minute. But they top the table at this moment in time. Jack will be happy as well. Tranmere dominating Shrewsbury 4-0. Looked like a very good performance. From Tranmere, I think the first name I saw that particularly caught the eye, I'm not surprised, is Amari Patrick. The amount of compliments I've seen from Shrewsbury fans from them, I've seen quite a few. You see the likes of Josh Davison's on the score sheet. Taylor Harris is there as well, and another goal for Christian Dennis. It's been a positive start for Tranmere. I think there's still question marks about attacking wise and all that sort of stuff. They picked up 4 points from their first two games, very nearly beating Colchester last week. If it wasn't for a worldy goal from them, I think they could be pretty content with the start. But as for Shrewsbury, finished game with 10 men. Will Boyle picked up 2 yellow cards in the space of a minute. And it sounded very negative on the Salop hashtag, having a read through that at the minute. Of course, I drew 0-0 with Bromley last week in their opening game. Grimsby have got Shrewsbury on Tuesday night in the Carabao Cup. There'll probably be rotations for both sides in that, so it'll be interesting to see how they set up. I do have my concerns with them. I think that sort of performance, I just get this losing. Shrewsbury just feel like a club that need fresh ideas mainly at the top level. I know there's been talk of a takeover for ages and all that sort of stuff, and nothing's really happened. I stand by it. I can't see them doing much this year. If anything, if they're going to do anything, I think they've got more chance of getting relegated. I really do. I know there's some players in that squad with good experience. I'm not sure. I have my doubts over a few aspects of that squad. I have a few question marks over Michael Apperton, but I've seen a few Shrewsbury fans say, I think you can have Jurgen Klopp in charge or anything like that. Would they get more of a tune out of these players at the minute? Probably not. It sounds like I'm sliding into the board a little bit, but it just feels like Shrewsbury are picking up where they left off in League One, and they were poor in League One last season. Of course, under Paul Hurst, they had Gareth Ainsworth before he jumped ship to Gillingham, and now under Appleton. You do sort of feel for Appleton a little bit, but it's no quick fix this. I think I'm right to have these concerns because of the downward trajectory that Shrewsbury have had over the last few years. It's been quite concerning. I can't lie.
Well, yeah, like I said, we don't want to judge anyone too much after 2 games, but you can see how these things spiral. It happened to Carlisle, dropped straight through. Happened to Forest Green, I think it was, dropped straight through. It's that whole first win thing again, isn't it? Just the mistakes they were making in that game. You look at them and you think that's just a side that's low on confidence. There's I know they've had new signings and all the rest of it. But ultimately, they're coming into a place where the culture is clearly not quite right. And there is that negative mentality, and it's going to take a lot to pull them back out of that. And, I mean, as a result, Tranmere are able to go and absolutely dominate them. And, I don't want to take anything away from Tranmere. I think they're, looked very sharp, opportunistic, picking up on every error, capitalizing on it. And I mean, to be fair, I think I said it last week as well. They look like they've got more ideas, and they clearly do because they went and scored 4. So this time around, so positive signs for Tranmere, absolutely. But with Shrewsbury, there's a lot of work to be done. We like some of the signings, but we also liked some of the signings that Carlisle made, and we're like, oh, they won't get relegated. They've got so-and-so that's performed well in the EFL over the last however many years. And I feel like we can kind of say the same thing about the Shrewsbury players coming in, but it's not actually changing all that much yet. It's a tough project to take on right now.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. But like I said, I think it's more pleasing for Tranmere that they've put a team to the sword. I mean, it's not many times that we've gone last season that Tranmere scored 4 goals again, and I think they scored 4 against Newport final day of the season. But I still question where the goals were coming from Tranmere. I know that might have settled a few minds, but I think the question's still there, though. I mean, 5 goals scored in the first 2 games. Certainly something positive to take away from that. And there's maybe a bit more to come. Like I said, I think their business has been very solid. I think there's more to come from Tranmere. And I'm excited to see where they get up to. It's clear to see that Andy Crosby has got a tune out of some of these players. Something that Nigel Atkins couldn't say before. They're decent for them, but yeah, I mean, you can't lose 4-0 in any game. Truth be told, losing any more than 3 goals in a game, I think is completely unacceptable. That's just my opinion anyway. And then, especially for, I think now they're very good away following yesterday as well. Shrewsbury, I think brought like 1,000 odd fans to Tranmere. I won't be having that. That's not good enough. I don't. And some of the goals they conceded and the manner that Woodball got sent off. Yeah, I would be far from impressed from that. Truth be told, and I've got a lot more questions of them. Let's have a look at Bromley. They beat Barnet by 2-0. Barnet, I tell you what, Barnet are finding life back into the EFL a little bit tough. First couple of games, 2 games gone. 2 defeats, 2-0 defeats. I think the main thing to note for Bromley is the fact that Michael Cheek is back on the score sheet. How many times could we see that this season? I know his future's been up in the air a little bit at Bromley, but it's his first goal this season. It's certainly something to keep an eye on. And I mean, Bromley sealed the points right at the end through Nicky Kabamba, who is a player that Barnet fans will know well. I think he scored a fair few goals for them in the National League for them over a good few years. But Barnet up and running with Bromley up and running with their first win. Barnet, look, two defeats to start the season for them. Currently rooted bottom of the table, yet to score a goal. Slow to get off the mark, it looks like.
Yeah, I'd say so. I don't think it's quite as bad as their managers making out. I mean, I still disagree with this whole Owen Evans situation. The fact he wasn't even in the squad after last week.
I pointed out because we had this discussion yesterday, not yesterday, but in the week. Of course, we talked about last week about the Owen Evans stuff and some of the words he said. And you get a keeper. If he's not going to sort it, they'll get a keeper. They'll replace him, and they ended up getting Kieran Slicker back, didn't they? Which sort of gives you the ruthlessness that he's got about him. But sorry, I've interrupted you there. Carry on.
No, it's all good. It's a valid point, and I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think it's anywhere near as bad overall as he's been making out. They can create chances. They're just not clinical enough yet. It is the defensive side that is a bit more problematic. The marking from that set piece for the first goal was poor, absolutely. But these are things that can be fixed. There are solutions to these things, and you wouldn't necessarily expect things to be perfect 2 games into the season, especially when you're adjusting to a new division. Sometimes teams take it by storm, but I think historically a lot of the teams that have come up as champions have like lost their first game. I mean, even Wrexham, when they came up, they lost their first game because we defeated them 6-3. But it happens a lot of the time. So I don't want to be too brutal with them at this stage. But I do want to give a lot of credit to Bromley. I think obviously they were better than people realised last season, and I still think they're better than the average person thinks they are still. It wasn't just the goals or the fact that they've got a result or anything like that. It's the quality of the chances. And they've been pretty consistent with it. And yes, they've missed some of them. Every team does, but the system that's in place there is working, and I can see it working on a much sort of longer term basis. Obviously, again, 2 games in, so maybe I'll be massively wrong, but they're getting into the right positions. I mean, they could have had more goals as well. I mean, Ben Thompson had a one-on-one that he definitely should have put away and not missed the target with. But if they keep getting into those positions, they'll keep scoring. And it won't just be Michael G. Yes, he's a fantastic scorer, but there are other players there that can do a job. And I think they've done a good job with their recruitment as well. So there will be other players that start to contribute more. The system's working.
Just a well-oiled machine, aren't they? I think you saw it at times last season. And the fact that it sort of proved how well we sort of see Bromley as the side that they've got big players, and that's true. They've got some right units about them, but if you actually look at them closely in some of the games, they actually play some really nice football. You see how they get up the pitch quickly, how they like to press, going forward. Yeah, there's been times last year where they were a genuine joy to watch, and I don't think that aspect of the game, I don't think they got enough credit for. I think they obviously got a lot of credit for last season with how they finished, and we've talked about Andy Woodman a fair few times on the podcast and how much of a great job he's doing over there. And we're just echoing that again, of course, friend of the channel. But I don't see how it can go much wrong, to be honest. They know what they're doing. Teams will find it hard to beat them this year. I honestly don't think they'll lose that many games. I really don't. They certainly won't be down at the bottom compared to maybe some of the bookies odds that we mentioned earlier. They're just a very good team. I still have high hopes for Barnet, obviously with that slow start, but again, 2 games in, I want to see a little bit more from them. But I'm not unlike a few teams that I've maybe gone into a little bit, and I think with them, I don't think it's a case of throwing the baby out the bathwater or anything like that. I think you just got to see where it takes them, because there's no denying that. Yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning that they brought in quite a fair few players this window as well. There's maybe that gelling period. I think you're probably going to get, and you've also mentioned about the slow start of not MK Dons but Wrexham, as you mentioned before, and a couple of teams have maybe started to get off the mark. I'm not concerned for them just yet. We'll have to see a little bit more from them. Other than the other promoted team, Oldham, they drew 1-1 with Colchester. Jack Tucker, I noticed, got the opening goal for Colchester, and of course, a big moment is Oldham's equaliser. Of course, their first goal back in the EFL scored by Josh Hawks. And to be honest, they probably should have won the game. I think you see some of the chances that they've had, and I think Joe quickly had one new signing. And is it Kane Drummond that missed? It looked harder to miss, didn't it? Did he forget? Was he playing rugby or something? Yeah, look, I think looking at it, I think Oldham might be. I get the sense that Oldham fans might be frustrated that they've only drawn in that game. It looks like they've certainly done enough to win the game. 2 draws for them to start the season, a 0-0 and a 1-1. Not the worst start in the world. I mean, they've got that goal. I think that was the main thing, scoring that first goal. I mean, he also got that first point last week. I know that, compared to Barnet, they're still waiting for that first goal and their first point. But Oldham have done different. I was concerned watching them against them Accrington the other night because they were so poor. It was unbelievable. No, there was certainly pleasing signs for the Latics in there. I think it's got to be said.
Well, yeah, I think their general play is pretty good, to be fair. It's just the quality of the finishing, and that Kane Drummond one highlights it perfectly. To be honest, like, I know we're only 2 games in, but that's the miss of the season. We're not going to see a worse one than that, I'm afraid. So congrats, Kane. But no, yeah, just that there are so many more chances. It wasn't just that one. So many more chances that they wasted. Good quality chances, yes, but they could have done a whole lot more with them. And to be fair, the goal they scored, I don't really know how that ball from Josh Hawks actually made its way into the net. It was a bit of a weird one, to be honest, but whatever works, maybe that will inspire some confidence in the final third. You'd certainly hope so if you're an Oldham fan. But they are involved. They are in games, at least in the league anyway. They're not, they look competitive for sure. There are definitely some finishing touches that need to be made, but like I said, no one's going to be finished article after 2 games. But from a Colchester perspective, I probably have a few more concerns because I was expecting them to hit the ground running a little bit more. Do want to give credit to Jack Tucker because it looks like he's playing with confidence again finally, and he's maybe becoming the player that we kind of knew he could be. Goal and an assist last week as well, actually. So doing quite well from an attacking perspective, despite being a centre-back. I don't know if it's just a case of not having Jack Payne on the pitch is costly. I know he came on from the bench, but do they have enough ideas without Jack Payne? Does their entire team fall apart if he's not there somewhere in the midfield making things tick? Because if that's the case, that for me is a bigger concern, because that's the problem that Notts had last season, where if you take out a key player or two and suddenly the whole thing falls apart. And again, only 2 games, but it's an early sort of creeping concern of mine that if Payne's not in that side, that maybe Colchester aren't anywhere near as good.
There's certainly valid points. And one thing I'd probably point out, I probably wouldn't read too much into it because, like I said, 2 games in, they've drawn both their games 1-1, and ultimately it was the draws last season that ended up costing them. It just feels like maybe at times maybe similar habits, but like I said, I wouldn't read too much into it at the moment because it's only 2 games. A lot can change, of course, but it just feels like, I mean, they're not losing games. I mean, yeah, great, but I mean, you'd probably prefer to win it. I mean, it looks like a decent point in the end. And how they equalised against Tranmere probably maybe look the same as well. But yeah, so like I said, I won't really look into it in great detail. But maybe something to maybe think about. That's just what I'm thinking now. 2 more games to get through. We'll just rattle through these very quickly. Gillingham won. They got their first win of the season. They beat Walsall by 1-0. Goal scored by Bradley Dack in that one. The Gills, with their first victory of the season, of course, they picked up that point last week at Accrington through their own goal. Of course, Walsall suffered their first defeat of the season after winning their opening game. It's 3 points for Gills at home. It just looks like they've got the job done to me. It's a win. It's 3 points to move.
Yeah, it's a win. The results there, the performance for me wasn't. They had probably the better chances, but the finishing for me from both sides was extremely poor. You look at the goal itself, it's ridiculously scrappy, and I think that kind of sums up the game, really. You kind of had 2 sides cancelling each other out, maybe a little bit edgy, and not enough cutting edge, really, for either team. I think regardless of the result, it's when you kind of just sweep under the rug. You kind of forget about it if you can and move on, hopefully try and bring in some improvements, because if you perform like that, I don't think it does you much good in the long term. But for Gillingham, at least, that's the result. The result's the important bit. But they're going to have to be better than that.
Yeah. What about Walsall? Of course, they've gone to Priestfield. They've gone to Priestfield and lost, of course, after the opening day. I think, yeah. I mean, we've mentioned about the Swindon defending for their goal last week, but of course, we're taking nothing away from that. They really dug in deep, and they got the win out of it in the end. Obviously, Priestfield. I mean, you don't really get a lot of goals from Gillingham anyway, and the one goal that they had, they scored 1 goal, and it proved to be enough yesterday. Certainly, I think it probably is more of a compliment of Gillingham, the fact that they don't look like they're going to concede many this year. But that's been the case with them for the last few years. That's never really been a great deal of a problem. It's more about their scoring goals. But yeah, I mean, Walsall, they've gone and lost there, haven't they? I don't really know much more to say, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, there's not many positives. I know. There's been Walsall fans over the last few weeks saying, "Oh, we're not positive enough about Walsall." And to be fair, I'll admit I don't think we gave you enough credit for the win last week with 10 men. But on this occasion, I don't think you've done yourselves justice at all. To be honest, I don't think you ever really got into this game, and it's one that's passed you by. Gillingham can be a tough place to go. As you've alluded to, they don't concede many goals, so yes, it's one of those sort of awkward types of games. I think we'll learn a lot more from Walsall's next league game, which I believe is Barnet away. And obviously Barnet, as we discussed previously, haven't had the best of starts, do tend to give away easy chances. That's a game where I want to see more from Walsall. I want to see them actually, put in a real performance that shows how good they were last season. Obviously, again, not going to be not panic stations yet, of course not. But I do think we need to see more.
Yeah, like I say, it could be a very open game on, as you mentioned. There's one more game to look at, and Kieran will be happy as Newport beat Crawley by 2-1. I mentioned Crawley last week. Following their defeat to Grimsby, and I said they were not pretty. There was a lot of things I was worried by, judging by their performance last week, and they've gone and lost to, of course, to Newport this time round. Kai Whitmore and Liam Shepherd, of course, returned to the club in the week on the score sheet. They did pull one back right at the end, Crawley, through Max Anderson, but it was just too late. And positive start for Newport, actually. 4 points from their first 2. Of course, that we've got a half decent point against Notts County. I know that Kieran was very content with that, and they seems to have done all right considering they were one of the relegation favourites. I mean, Crawley 2 defeats from 2, 5 goals conceded, and then reading the Crawley reaction again, it didn't sound very pretty yesterday. Again, I think there's a lot of work to do with Crawley in terms of recruitment. I think they need way more, certainly more to suit the style that Scott Lindsay wants to implement, because I'm really not seeing it. I've noticed a lot of criticism towards Harry McCurdy and Reece Brown yesterday in particular. I questioned the Reece Brown signing at the time, and I still am not, especially when you've been out the game for a year. I've not been at a club for a year. I think you're probably always going to get that. It's always going to be difficult to get to speed. I know Harry McCurdy's not really settled last few places. I know there's been circumstances to that personally, but I think those 2 in particular weren't high up the estimations of Crawley fans at the minute. I'm really not sold on this Crawley team at all. Maybe there might be one to look at. We mentioned about Shrewsbury, but the early signs don't look great for them either. Maybe we're looking at them to be proper struggling.
That's an excellent point. It really is. To give them at least a little bit of credit, I think they were at least creating a few chances. I think Shimanga had to score the one that he had. There's a very, very good chance he's just totally blazed over the bar. I just have concerns over quality of the players more than anything. We know that the system Lindsay wants to implement can work because it's worked before. But at the same time, you need the right players to be able to do that. You also need to not sell all of them every single year. That's kind of all there is to it with Crawley for me. I think there's a lot of work to be done. If they do get the hang of it, it's going to be weeks, maybe months before they really get to grips with that system, because it's not an easy one to learn, and Lindsay does expect a lot of his players. From a Newport perspective, I think they've conceded too many chances for me. I think Nick Zanev has put in a very, very good performance, as much as I hate to admit it, because I don't particularly like him due to his previous club. Although maybe I should like him because he got that club relegated, but I digress. I think they were just conceding too many chances for me. I'm going to rain on their parade a little bit. I think a better side punishes them a whole lot more than Crawley did.
Hopefully us next week. I'd say we're very capable of it.
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe you guys will prove me right, and that will be the case, and that will be an interesting game, actually, thinking about it. But there are positive signs there, and early signs are there better than I would have predicted. But it's a long old season, and I can see some pretty major flaws in that team as well. So I guess we'll have to wait and see on that one.
The season is a marathon, not a sprint, as the old saying goes. And it felt like a marathon, this podcast, anyway, because we ran over a little bit. And it's not always been plain sailing, as you probably might listen or might not. It probably won't be, because I'll be chucked in edit requests. And that will probably change, especially when I was muted midway through, apparently. I don't know why that happened. But there you go. That's the top job professionals you get on this podcast. Thank you very much for listening anyway. If you did enjoy it, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. I feel bad that I've sort of messed that a little bit up, because I feel like I've learnt that off by heart now. Make sure you go share this podcast, download it wherever you get it from. Of course, we thank SkyBet for sponsoring the podcast again. We'll be back in the week. It'll probably be a late Tuesday night recording, considering there's Carabao Cup action on and conflicting schedules between the hosts. We probably might struggle to get a guest on this week. So, we'll have to see what happens with that. But, we'll we'll bring you that once we do it. And we'll be back next week for our preview show and our review show. And we'll catch you in the next one. Let us know what you think, of course. And we'll see you soon. Thanks once again to our partners for this episode, SkyBet. SkyBet understands the beautiful chaos of being a football fan. The highs, the lows, the heartache and the glory. It's all part of the ride. And we wouldn't trade it for anything. Not for everyone, for the fans. SkyBet, 18+, gambleaware.org.